Hi everyone, the book that I am reading today is A Little House on the Prairie book, Christmas in the Big Woods. I love Little House on the Prairie books. They're about a little girl named Laura and her family, and they're actually true stories. When Laura grew up, she decided to write books about her childhood. And so these books take place right about the time that Abraham Lincoln was president. Laura was actually born right after Abraham Lincoln was president. So there's lots of picture books in the library that you can check out about Laura and her family, as well as chapter books that are Little House on the Prairie. So we're going to see how Laura celebrated Christmas a long time ago, almost 150 years ago. And I bet some of her traditions are the same as yours. So as I read, you might think maybe you do the same things that Laura did around this time of year. It says, "Once upon a time, a little girl named Laura lived in the big woods of Wisconsin in a little house made of logs." Now it says once upon a time there, which kind of makes me think of a fairy tale, but remember, Laura was a real girl. This is a true story. Laura lived in the little house with her pa, her ma, her big sister Mary, her little sister Carrie, and their good old bulldog Jack. Christmas was coming, and the little house was covered with snow. When Pa came in from shoveling, he caught Laura up in a big bear hug against his cold winter coat. His mustache was covered with melting snowflakes. Ma was busy all day long cooking good things for Christmas. She baked bread and apple pies and filled a big jar with cookies. Laura and Mary got to lick the spoon. Pa and Ma showed Laura and Mary how to make molasses candy by pouring hot sugar and molasses syrup into pans of snow. Now that molasses syrup, guys, would have been similar to the type of syrup you would use on pancakes or waffles. The syrup hardened at once and turned into candy. Laura and Mary could eat one piece each, but the rest was saved for Christmas Day. The day before Christmas, Aunt Eliza, Uncle Peter, and cousins Peter, Alice, and Ella came to visit. Laura and Mary heard sleigh bells ringing, and then a big bobsled came out of the woods. Aunt Eliza, Uncle Peter, and the cousins were inside, covered up with blankets. When everyone came inside, the little house was filled to the seams. Jack ran around in circles, barking happily. Now there were lots of children to play with. Laura and Mary and the cousins put on their warm coats and mittens and scarves and went outside to make pictures in the soft, deep snow. They played so hard that when night came, they were too excited to sleep. But they knew they must, or Santa Claus would not come. So they hung their stockings by the fireplace, put on their red flannel nightgowns, and went to bed. In the morning, they all woke up almost at the same moment and ran to see what was in their stockings. In every stocking was a pair of bright red mittens and a stick of red and white striped peppermint candy. They were so happy they could hardly speak. But Laura was the happiest of all. In her stocking was a beautiful rag doll with black button eyes and a pink and blue dress. Laura named her doll Charlotte, and she let all the other children hold her. Now I like this part of the story because in some of Laura's other books, she talks about using a corn on the cob as a doll. She would take a corn on the cob and wrap it in a blanket and pretend that was her doll. So receiving that doll for Christmas would have been very special for her. For Christmas breakfast, Mom made each child a pancake man. All the children held their plates next to the stove and watched while Ma made the pancake men one by one out of pancake batter. Peter ate his up right away, but the girls ate theirs slowly to make them last. It was too cold to go outside, so the children played quietly inside. They ate their candy, admired their mittens, and looked at the pictures in Pa's big green book until it was time for the cousins to go home. Laura held Charlotte in her arms the whole time. Now, I like this Pa's Big Green Book. Laura talks about Pa's Big Green Book a lot in her stories because it was very special to own a book back then. They didn't have as many books in their houses like we might today. And so Pa's Big Green Book was actually a book about animals. Laura would get to turn the pages and see pictures of animals and read about them. And they still have Pa's Big Green Book today. You can go and visit different places Laura's lived. And I actually got to go to one of her houses that's in Missouri, where she lived with Almanzo, Farmer Boy, if you know Little House on the Prairie stories. And they have Pa's Big Green Book on display. I think it's pretty neat that they still have that from such a long time ago. At last, Aunt Eliza, Uncle Peter, and the cousins bundled up in their coats and blankets and got into the bobsled. Goodbye, they called, and off they went into the woods. In a little while, the happy sound of sleigh bells was gone, and Christmas was over. But what a happy Christmas it had been. And then I like that last page here. Shows the presents Laura received that Christmas, her doll, and peppermint stick and mittens. Now, that may not seem like much to you to receive on Christmas morning, but that was a lot for Laura. She didn't have very much, and so that was a lot for her. Actually, she talks about her favorite Christmas ever was when she received a tin cup, a peppermint stick, and a penny. And she says that she didn't get to have her own cup at mealtime. She would have to share her drinking cup with her sister. And so when she received her very own tin cup at Christmas, she felt very grown up. So that's Laura and Christmas in the Big Woods. Now, maybe some of you had some similar things that Laura did. Maybe you have trouble falling asleep on Christmas Eve because you're so excited like Laura. Or maybe you make snow angels like Laura and her sisters and her cousins did. Or maybe if someone's baking at your house, you get to lick the spoon like Laura and her sister. All right, I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. We'll see ya.